Hello, dosto. My name is Deepak, and I'm a tax code advisor. So let me ask you this: why did the turkey cross the road? Well, to prove that it was not a chicken. Well, guess what? This tax season, IRS wants to prove to you that they are not a chicken. Now, we all know that President Trump is going to take office in January, and he has assured the Americans that he's going to take some action against IRS. In matter of fact, Elon Musk recently talked about that, how he wants to audit the IRS itself. So that'll be kind of interesting outcome that we are going to see this year. But I wanted to point out some important rule that has already taken effect and is going to impact millions of people. So the rule I'm talking about is related to 1099K. It is going to impact a lot of people because they're just not used to it. A lot of people are not used to seeing 1099K. You might have seen 1099 for your dividend income. You might have seen it for your interest income. You might have seen it for some other income, but very few people might have actually seen a 1099K. And I think many people are going to receive it this year and they will be in for a surprise. So I want to talk about what are some of the circumstances where you should be paying attention to it, whether you should ignore it or not. Are all transactions reportable on 1099K? So we'll be addressing all of those kind of scenarios today. So what is all the fuzz about? What is this 1099K all about? So the idea here is, imagine if four or five people live in a house and they all start a business together. Maybe they do some tutoring, maybe they're selling some food, maybe they are doing some sort of online service and whatnot. And they collect payment using third-party applications like PayPal or Venmo or Cash App or something like that. Now, as long as their total payment for the entire year does not exceed over $20,000, the third party applications are not required to report. Now, why is that important? Imagine if I hire an employee, if I hire somebody for my business, when I pay them, I am required to tell IRS how much did I pay that person. Now, let's say you hire somebody, maybe you hired a contractor to work on your garage, or maybe they did some website building for you. You, as an individual, is also required to report to IRS that you have paid this person $1,000, $2,000, $5,000. But what about all these third party apps? This is where things get confusing because if I am, for example, if I write a check to somebody, then I kind of make an assumption that my bank is going to take care of that. Or if I pay somebody by credit card, I make an assumption that my credit card company is going to take care of that reporting. And that is true to some extent. For example, let's say you put your property on Airbnb. So doesn't the Airbnb does all the reporting for you? Of course they do. What about Uber or Lyft or any other marketplace? When you earn some sort of income from them, those people are reporting that to IRS as well. So it is somewhat acceptable that these third parties will be reporting to IRS. But like I said, in the case of these Cash, Venmo, PayPal, these people were not required to report any transaction up to $20,000. So that means in a family that maybe have four or five people and each person provides some sort of service and they earn $20,000 and they say, hey, just pay me via PayPal, pay me via Venmo or something like that. PayPal is not reporting. Venmo is not reporting. And if the end customer also does not report, that means that income has completely gone unreported. You on the receiving hand, you might report, you might not report, but that's really up to your discussion. In generally speaking, here in the United States, we work on a trust basis. Unfortunately, a lot of people out there break that trust. They don't report all the income that they should be reporting. And that's where IRS is frustrated about. They're saying, look, this is just not right. If you are earning some money, you should be reporting it to IRS. Uh, Now, I know some of you might give me an example of gas stations or restaurants or grocery stores. You go to these people, and sometimes we will see a big ATM right in front of the building saying we only accept cash. That you got to use the ATM, get the cash out, and then that pay me. That's a whole different story, and people are working on dealing with that. But today, I want to just talk about these third-party applications. But the scenario is the same. IRS is frustrated with people not reporting income. So, what would IRS like to do? IRS would like to do what IRS want to do is they want anyone who is earning more than 600 bucks through any mechanism, any medium, they want that transaction to be reported. But IRS tried to implement that back in 2022, in 2023, and these third-party processors, as well as the lobbyists, as well as business owners, individuals, consumers, taxpayers, they all got frustrated. Why? Because there were a lot of confusion, because some of these transactions were coming from a household members, some are very small, and it was too crazy. Now you might say, how crazy? Well, IRS itself has said that the number is well over 44 million people. That means if they would have implemented 1099K for amount over $600, 44 million people would have received 1099K, and many of them would not be actually responsible for paying taxes. So it would have created a lot of frustration within the community. So IRS came back and said, you know what, let's slow down. Let's take a step back and let's try to better understand the problem. And maybe we will come back a year later and try to implement it. And that's exactly what they did. So they went back in 2023 and tried to implement it again. And people came back and said the same thing, that is still not good enough. We're still running into trouble. People are still not able to report all their transactions. So what should we do? So in 2024, IRS said, well, tell you what, why don't we bring the threshold down from 20,000 to 5,000? Because if it's 5,000, that should not impact people who are using these third-party applications for generic transactions. For example, maybe you sold your used car, maybe you sold a sofa, or maybe you did a garage sale. It would not impact all of those people. But people who are serious about doing business and they're earning more than $5,000, they will get caught in this net, and they would receive a 1099K, and now they would be required to file a proper tax return and report proper income. So for 2024, if you have received more than $5,000 from Venmo, from PayPal, Cash App, then you will receive 1099K. What about in 2025? Well, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. We don't know yet what will happen in 2025. It could be $5,000. It could be $10,000. Maybe they bring it out to $600. We don't know. What IRS has said is, let us see how this tax season go, how many people report, what kind of problems we hear, and then we are going to decide what are we going to do next year. However, even in 2025, I think some people would be shocked and they will be not prepared. So, what do I mean by that? Well, imagine if you did a garage sale and you sold your sofa that you purchased, let's say, for $10,000 a few years ago, and now you sold it for $2,000. Maybe you had a dining table that you sold for another $2,000. Maybe you have some other furniture you sold for $2,000. So overall, let's say your total payment was $6,000 through PayPal. So 6,000, you receive $6,000 in payment via PayPal because you sold your used furniture. IRS only saw one side of that transaction. IRS only saw that you received an income. But what about all the expenses? I mean, you bought that dining table, you purchased that sofa, you purchased all the items that you sold at a garage sale. And that means you need to really treat it like a business and now report it to IRS that, look, I purchased it for this amount and this is what I sold it for. So I actually have a loss. So that's one thing. I think a lot of people are going to miss out on this important step, which is going to result in extra tax to them. Second problem, what about the sales tax? A lot of people ignore filing their sales tax return. Now that they get the 1099, they're almost required because now the transaction itself is reported. So now people who are ignoring the sales tax will probably continue to ignore the sales tax. And now they will start getting notices from state agencies about that sales tax not being reported either. So that's a second problem I think people will be shocked with. Third problem has to do with tax professionals and tax softwares. People who are not in a business, meaning people who are not doing side hustle, people who are not running a small business themselves, these people are not used to 1099s. These people are not used to doing proper accounting. These people are not used to understanding what 1099 is, how is it reported on tax return, and so forth. So these folks would have no idea. So when they will go to a tax professional, what is tax professional going to say? Two things. Number one, they're going to tell them increased fees. So whatever you were paying before, it will be a little bit more. Why? Because there's more work involved. That's one problem. Second problem is tax professional will say, okay, so you sold your sofa. Well, how much did you buy it for? And you will say, well, I bought it for $10,000. Okay, great. Let me see the receipt. And you're going to say, well, I bought the sofa 10 years ago. I don't have a receipt. Well, if you don't have a receipt, how are you going to substantiate that the cost of that product was $10,000? So those are the kind of problems that we're going to run into in 2024. Now, the good news is IRS has given us up to $5,000 threshold to deal with that. But the issue is if it's more than 5,000. So what kind of tips I can give you? Well, number one is maybe you split the transaction into multiple people. Maybe let's say if you do have a lot of that use stuff that you're selling, maybe you do less than 5,000 under your name, and then maybe your parents do another less than 5,000 transaction under their name. So you kind of split up the transaction so it doesn't go over $5,000 threshold to avoid that kind of reporting. Second tip I can offer you is keep receipts. Maybe you bought it online through some store, or you bought it from regular brick and mortar store, but maybe you go to them and ask them for a receipt. If none of that works, then the only other option I can offer you is you try to find a similar product in the market and depreciate it over time and come up with some sort of reasonable price for it. And I'm saying this kind of stuff because you don't have an original receipt, and I want you to be reasonable with it. So if you see another product in the market for $10,000 and you say, look, I also bought it for $10,000, I don't think that's going to work that well. But if you're reasonable, then IRS will probably going to accept it. So that's what I mean by you got to be a little bit more reasonable. Don't be too aggressive in reporting those kind of expenses. So these are some of the problems that I think people are going to run into related with 1099K. Now, there are some things that you should not be reporting. For example, your household transactions. Maybe you're sharing a rent with your family member. Maybe you're giving somebody a gift. Maybe you are bought some groceries for your family, or somebody else in your household. Those kind of household related transaction, there is no requirement for 1099K. So you should ignore it. Now, but how are you going to ignore it? What about if I send you a PayPal transaction for your birthday card? Like, hey, $100, happy birthday or happy anniversary. What about all those transactions? Well, this is where it's very, very important that when you pay somebody, you properly mark it. Is it personal or business? Because if it's business, then the third party application is responsible for keeping track of whether that person has received more than $600 or not just from you. Remember, the transaction is overall. They could have received it from party A, party B, party C, as long as total threshold is more than $5,000. In 2024, they are going to receive in 1099K. 2025, it could be more than 600. It could be some other amount. I don't know at this point. But let's talk about in personal level. If you don't pay through a business app and you don't mark that you paid them for business, then the responsibility is on you. What if you mark in the app that you're paying somebody for personal expense, but it was actually a business expense? Guess what? Now you are responsible for reporting it properly to the IRS. So be very careful. How do you report that transaction? I want to make sure you understand that a lot of people pay through PayPal and Venmo to their contractors. That is a big problem. If you pay them through a contractor, you're showing it's a personal payment, and you're using them to do some sort of service. Guess what? Their insurance will probably not cover it. Their insurance will probably say, "Wait a minute, it's a gift. You mark it personally." He can argue that it was just a tip. So be very careful with those kind of issues as well. But overall, I think no matter what happens, it is going to still create all kind of confusion in 2024. People still going to come back to us and telling us that, oh, we got screwed up. And then IRS is not going to be that helpful either, because sometimes they send out wrong notices. Sometimes they get a wrong transaction reported. So I think there's going to be a lot of mess in the next tax season. But the best advice I can do is documentation. The better documentation you have, the better it is. Another thing is, if you receive a 1099K, just don't ignore it. Just ignoring and closing your eyes is not going to help you. You have to respond to it, even if it is wrong. Imagine you're not the one who received anything at all, and maybe it was your neighbor who got the money. But as long as you receive a 1099K, you are still responsible for dealing with it. So please don't ignore it. We still need to deal with that transaction. We still need to report it. So if you don't know how to report it, please go to a local tax professional. Let them help you with it. So I hope that clarifies it, but I would love to hear your comments on it, see whether you agree, disagree, and what kind of problems you see with it, because all of this will be coming into a play in 2025, but we have till the end of the year to deal with it. So, and then maybe I should do another video and I'll talk a little bit more about to all the people you need to issue 1099 to. That is extremely important as well. My name is Deepak, and I'm a tax code advisor. So if you have any tax questions, you would like some help with reducing your taxes, maybe you're doing some business from India or Pakistan, Bangladesh in the United States, you need some help with that, or you are somebody who lives in US and you're moving back to a different country and you want somebody to help you manage those businesses here, I'm your guy. I specialize in that, so I'll be happy to help you. I talk about immigration, I talk about finance updates, real estate updates, and of course, the tax update, because all of those things are important to my client base. Those are the conversations I hear happening all the time. So follow me, share this video, comment on this video, let me know what do you think. If you have a question, leave it in the comments below so that way I can cover the answer for you in the next video as well. Thank you so much for spending your last 15 minutes with me. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. In the meanwhile, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.